January 27th, 2026. That is the date Google's most elite cybersecurity team, Project Zero, published a finding that should have been headline news on every television channel, every newspaper, every social media platform on Earth. It was not. Most people never heard about it. What Project Zero confirmed is that hackers can fully compromise your Android phone through a WhatsApp group chat without you tapping, clicking, opening, or doing anything at all. The attack is invisible, the delivery is automatic, and the setting that makes it possible is turned on by default on your phone right now. Before you scroll past this, check that setting first. There is a version of cybersecurity that most people are familiar with. It involves suspicious links, strange emails from unknown senders, pop-up warnings demanding you call a phone number immediately, and strangers asking for your password. Most people who have spent any meaningful time on the internet have developed a reasonable instinct for these threats. They do not click links from numbers they do not recognize. They do not download files from strangers. They have heard enough warnings to know that carelessness online carries consequences. This version of cybersecurity, the one built around human error, around tricking someone into doing something they should not do, is the one that most security education focuses on. And it is increasingly irrelevant to the category of threat that security researchers are documenting in 2025 and 2026, because the most dangerous attacks now being deployed against ordinary WhatsApp users do not require you to do anything wrong. They require you to do nothing at all. They work because your phone does things automatically in the background without asking for your permission in ways that most users never think about and most applications never explain. And that invisible automation has become the most actively exploited attack surface in mobile security today. On January 27th, 2026, Google's Project Zero team published a formal vulnerability disclosure that described exactly this problem in WhatsApp for Android. Project Zero is not a small operation or an independent blog. It is Google's dedicated internal team of world-class security researchers whose entire professional mandate is to find the most technically complex, most deeply hidden security vulnerabilities in widely used software before malicious actors find them independently. When Project Zero publishes a disclosure, it represents months of rigorous technical investigation, responsible notification to the affected company, and a formal finding that the vulnerability is real, exploitable, and serious enough to warrant public awareness. The January 2026 disclosure described a vulnerability in WhatsApp's automatic media download behavior inside group chats that allows a malicious file, sent into a newly created group, to be automatically downloaded onto every member's device without any of those members ever interacting with the file in any way. The attacker needs to know one contact linked to the target's WhatsApp account. With that single piece of information, they create a group containing that contact, and the target send a specially engineered file, and WhatsApp's own systems do the rest, processing the file automatically, executing the attacker's code in the process, and handing over access to the device without the owner ever receiving a notification, a warning, or any indication that anything has occurred. What makes this finding especially significant is not just the nature of the vulnerability itself, but the context surrounding it. Reportedly, Meta, the company that owns WhatsApp, had already attempted to address at least a portion of this problem by pushing a server-side fix on November 11, 2025, more than 2 months before Project Zero went public. Google's assessment was unambiguous. The fix was partial. The underlying problem persisted. During those 2 months between Meta's partial fix and Google's public disclosure, users were in the worst possible position, unaware of any threat, unable to evaluate a risk they did not know existed, with a vulnerability that was known inside the company but not communicated to the public. That window between internal knowledge and public disclosure is one of the most reliably dangerous gaps in all of cybersecurity, and it is a gap that sophisticated attackers monitor and actively exploit, knowing that users who are not warned cannot protect themselves, and that a partially patched system still contains residual vulnerabilities that a sufficiently skilled attacker can continue to use. To understand the full dimension of what we are dealing with, you need to go back further than January 2026, because the Project Zero disclosure did not emerge in a vacuum. It is the most recent confirmed data point in a pattern of WhatsApp group chat exploitation that has been building in sophistication and scale for years. The same category of attack, zero-click, automatic, requiring no user interaction, delivered through WhatsApp's media processing systems, has been documented in multiple separate campaigns, linked to multiple different threat actors, resulting in real compromises of real devices belonging to real people. The January 2026 finding is not the beginning of the story. It is a confirmation that the story is continuing, and that the techniques being used to write it are becoming more refined, more accessible, and more dangerous with each documented iteration. The chapter that most clearly illustrates where this trajectory leads began in December 2024, when WhatsApp's internal security team detected and disrupted an active spyware campaign that had been deploying against users without their knowledge. The campaign used WhatsApp group chats as its delivery mechanism. The payload was graphite, a commercial surveillance tool built by an Israeli company called Paragon Solutions. The method of delivery was specially crafted PDF files sent into WhatsApp groups. And the defining technical characteristic of the attack, confirmed by WhatsApp directly, was that the PDF did not need to be opened by the recipient for the spyware to be installed. The automatic processing that WhatsApp performs on files when they arrive in a group was sufficient. The file arrived. WhatsApp's systems processed it automatically. Graphite was installed. The device was compromised. The entire sequence happened without the target's knowledge or participation, while they were going about their ordinary day, perhaps checking a different chat, perhaps asleep, perhaps in a meeting, their phone silently working against them through a process they had never thought to disable. Approximately 90 individuals were notified by WhatsApp that they had been targeted in this campaign. The victims were primarily journalists and civil society members, people whose professional work involves covering politically sensitive topics, communicating with confidential sources, or advocating for human rights in environments where those activities attract hostile attention from powerful actors. WhatsApp sent Paragon Solutions a formal cease and desist letter. Meta notified Citizen Lab, the University of Toronto-based research organization that specializes in tracking the intersection of cybersecurity and human rights. And Citizen Lab's researcher John Scott Railton publicly confirmed that his team had observed the campaign and had begun their own investigation. The attack, as subsequently analyzed by security researchers, used WhatsApp group chat specifically because the automatic download behavior of the platform created a reliable, repeatable, zero-click delivery mechanism that did not depend on the target making any mistake. Paragon Solutions, for those encountering the name for the first time, occupies a specific and increasingly controversial niche in the global technology market. The company was founded in Israel and markets its products exclusively to government agencies, positioning graphite as a lawful interception tool for legitimate law enforcement purposes. In December 2024, the company was acquired by AE Industrial Partners, a United States-based private equity firm, for a reported figure of at least $500 million. That acquisition valuation reflects not just Paragon's current revenue, but the market's assessment of future growth and demand for commercial spyware capabilities. The company had previously signed a $2 million contract with United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Its executive chairman publicly stated that Paragon licenses its technology to a select group of democratic governments. What December 2024's WhatsApp campaign made undeniable is that those stated commitments to responsible use did not prevent graphite from being deployed against journalists through a zero-click WhatsApp group chat exploit. $500 million, government contracts, stated ethical principles, and 90 journalists with compromised phones who never opened a file, never clicked a link, and never made a single identifiable mistake. Paragon's graphite spyware draws comparison from researchers to the more widely discussed Pegasus tool developed by NSO Group, and that comparison is not casual. Pegasus is the commercial spyware that brought zero-click WhatsApp exploitation to the world's attention at scale. NSO Group's exploitation of a WhatsApp vulnerability in 2019 resulted in what Meta's legal filing described as the targeting of approximately 1,400 mobile devices over a 2-week period. That lawsuit, filed in a California federal court in October 2019 and resolved in WhatsApp's favor in December 2024 after a 5-year legal battle, produced court documents that described in technical detail how NSO Group used WhatsApp's own infrastructure to deliver Pegasus to targets' devices. The targets included journalists, they included lawyers, they included human rights workers, and they included people who had no obvious connection to any of those professional categories, but who happened to be socially adjacent to individuals that governments wanted to monitor. Family members, business associates, friends whose phones became stepping stones. The 2019 campaign was not random, but it was not entirely precise either. And the fact that it reached 1,400 devices in 2 weeks through WhatsApp's infrastructure tells you something important about the scale at which these tools can be deployed when the technical barriers are low and the automatic processing behavior of the target platform does the attackers work for them. Then came the August 2025 campaign, which represented a significant escalation in technical sophistication and triggered responses from organizations that do not move unless the threat is genuinely serious. In August 2025, security researchers and WhatsApp's internal team confirmed the active exploitation of a newly identified vulnerability tracked as CVE 2025-55177. This vulnerability had a CVSS severity score of 8, 0 when assessed by one major security organization, and 4 by another, the discrepancy reflecting different methodologies for evaluating impact. But both assessments missed something that only became clear when researchers analyzed how the vulnerability was being used in practice. CVE 2025-55177 existed in WhatsApp's linked device synchronization protocol. the system that manages the connection between a WhatsApp account and the multiple devices on which it can be simultaneously active. The vulnerability allowed an attacker with no established relationship to the target to force the target device to process content from an arbitrary URL, a location entirely under the attacker's control. In practice, this meant the ability to deliver whatever the attacker wanted the device to process, with the processing occurring automatically through WhatsApp's synchronization system, entirely without user interaction. What elevated this from a serious vulnerability to a critical threat was the way it was being used in combination with a simultaneous vulnerability in Apple's operating system. CVE 2025-43300 existed in Apple's Image I/O framework, the component within iOS and macOS responsible for processing image files whenever any application needs to display or save them. Apple's own security advisory described it as an out-of-bounds write issue, a type of memory error in which processing a specially constructed image causes the system to write data outside the boundaries of the allocated memory space, corrupting adjacent memory in ways that can allow an attacker to execute arbitrary code. Apple confirmed that they were aware of reports indicating this vulnerability had been exploited in what they characterized as an extremely sophisticated attack against specific targeted individuals. The two vulnerabilities together, CVE 2025-55117, in WhatsApp's synchronization layer and CVE 2025-43300 in Apple's image processing framework, were chained by attackers into a single exploit sequence. WhatsApp's synchronization flaw forced the device to retrieve an attacker-controlled file. That file was a malicious image, engineered to trigger the Image I/O vulnerability. The Image I/O vulnerability provided the memory corruption needed for code execution. The end result was complete device compromise. The installation of spyware, persistent surveillance access, and full visibility into the target's communications, camera, microphone, and stored data, all without the target doing anything, tapping anything, or receiving any warning from any system on their device. Doncha O'Carabile, who leads the security lab at Amnesty International, publicly confirmed the zero-click nature of the August 2025 exploit chain and noted that early forensic analysis indicated the campaign was affecting both iPhone and Android users, with confirmed victims in civil society. WhatsApp notified what reporting from dark reading characterized as approximately 200 individuals that their devices were believed to have been compromised in the preceding 90 days by an advanced spyware campaign using CVE 2025-55177. 200 people. Each of them received a message from WhatsApp informing them, after the fact, that their device and the data it contained, including their messages, had very likely been compromised. Amnesty International's advisory to those individuals included a recommendation to perform a complete factory reset of their device, not an app update, not a settings change. A full factory reset, the most disruptive remediation measure available to an ordinary user, recommended because the depth of access the exploit provided made less drastic measures potentially insufficient. The United States government's response to this situation was not slow. On September 2, 2025, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added CVE 2025-55117 to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. This catalog is not a theoretical risk register. It contains only vulnerabilities for which CISA has confirmed evidence of active exploitation in real-world attacks. Inclusion in the KEV catalog triggers mandatory remediation requirements for federal agencies and serves as the government's most direct signal to the public that a vulnerability is not hypothetical but actively weaponized. On the same date, U.S. government guidance urged the entire federal workforce to update their devices immediately. Federal employees, people who carry some of the most sensitive data on their phones of anyone in the country, people who are themselves a high-value target for hostile actors, were told that a WhatsApp vulnerability required emergency action. The urgency of that guidance reflects what classified threat intelligence was showing at the time. And what it was showing was serious enough that the agencies responsible for protecting government communications concluded that immediate action was necessary across the entire workforce. Google's threat analysis group provided additional context that situates all of this within a broader trend that shows no signs of reversing. Their 2024 analysis documented 75 zero-day vulnerabilities, previously unknown security flaws being exploited before any patch exists, that were actively abused in the wild during that year. That figure represents a sustained climb over the preceding 4 years, with only minor year-to-year variation. The volume of zero-day exploitation is rising. The technical barrier to deploying zero-click attacks is falling as the techniques become better documented, more widely studied, and more commercially available through the mercenary spyware market. And WhatsApp, with its 2 billion active users and its group chat architecture that automatically processes incoming media files, sits at the center of this trend as one of the most attractive and most actively targeted attack surfaces in the world. All of which leads to the question that determines whether everything you have just learned makes any practical difference in your life. What can you actually do about it, and will it actually work? The answer from Google's Project Zero, from Amnesty International's Security Lab, from Malwarebytes, and from WhatsApp's own security team is consistent across all of these organizations. Yes, specific settings. Changes meaningfully reduce your exposure to these documented attack vectors. They do not make your device invulnerable. Nothing does. But they directly address the automatic behaviors that multiple separate campaigns have exploited as their primary delivery mechanism, and they raise the technical difficulty of targeting you to a level that makes automated broad campaigns significantly less effective against you specifically. The setting that demands your attention first, the one that sits at the foundation of the January 2026 Project Zero vulnerability, the December 2024 Paragon PDF campaign, and the broader class of zero-click group chat exploits, is automatic media download. When this setting is active, every photo, video, audio file, and document that arrives in any of your WhatsApp chats begins downloading the moment it arrives, regardless of which chat it came from, regardless of whether you're looking at your phone, regardless of whether you have any relationship with the person who sent it. This automatic process is what researchers have repeatedly identified as the attack surface. The file arrives, WhatsApp downloads it, WhatsApp begins processing it. If the file has been engineered to exploit a processing vulnerability, the exploit completes within that automated sequence. Your involvement is not required. Your awareness is not required. Your consent is not required. Disabling automatic download removes this automated pathway. Files still arrive in your chats. You can still view them by tapping on them. But the download and processing no longer happen invisibly in the background without your deliberate choice to initiate them. That deliberate choice, that single tap, is what breaks the zero-click chain. No tap, no automatic download, no automatic download, no automatic exploit. The process for disabling this on Android requires you to open WhatsApp and navigate to the three-dot menu at the top of the screen, select Settings, then proceed to Storage and Data. Within that menu, the Media Auto Download section presents three separate categories covering different network connection types, when using mobile data, when connected on Wi-Fi, and when roaming. Each of these categories must be addressed individually. Tap the first one and deselect Photos, Audio, Videos, and Documents, every option listed. Return to the previous screen, tap the second category, and repeat the process. Return again, tap the third category, and complete the same deselection. When every category shows no media type selected, the setting is fully disabled across all connection contexts. On iPhone, the path is Settings from the bottom navigation bar, then Storage and Data, then the Media Auto Download section, where the identical three categories appear. The process is the same. Tap each one, deselect everything, confirm. This single change addresses the primary delivery mechanism of every documented zero-click group chat exploit disclosed in 2025 and 2026. The second setting that requires your attention connects directly to the technical architecture of CVE 2025-5177, the vulnerability that CySA added to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog in September 2025. That vulnerability operated through WhatsApp's linked device synchronization system. And that same system presents a second security concern beyond its role as an attack vector. It is also a persistence mechanism that sophisticated attackers exploit to maintain access to a compromised account even after the initial intrusion has been discovered and partially remediated. When an attacker successfully compromises a WhatsApp account through any means, one of the documented follow-on actions is the silent addition of a linked device, an entry in your account's linked devices list that is not yours, but that gives the attacker the ability to receive copies of every message sent and received through your account going forward. This persistence can survive app updates, settings changes, and even device restarts because it operates at the account level rather than the device level. Reviewing your linked devices list and removing any entry you do not personally recognize or actively use is therefore not just a matter of limiting your attack surface, but of ensuring that any previously established unauthorized access is revoked. Find this in WhatsApp settings under linked devices on iPhone or through the three-dot menu on Android. Examine every entry carefully. Remove anything unfamiliar. Establish a habit of checking this monthly. The third protection addresses the specific technical precondition that Google's Project Zero identified as necessary for the January 2026 group chat vulnerability. The attacker must be able to add you and one of your contacts to a new group. WhatsApp provides direct control over who can perform this action. In Settings, under Privacy, under Groups, you will find an option that by default is set to everyone, permitting any user anywhere in the world who possesses your phone number to add you to any group without advance notice or approval from you. Changing this to My Contacts means that only people whose numbers exist in your saved contacts can add you directly. Any other user who attempts to add you to a group will be prompted to send you an invitation link instead, which arrives as a message that gives you the opportunity to evaluate the request before deciding whether to join. This directly addresses the initial step of the Project Zero attack chain and forces any attacker who wants to use group chat delivery against you to either already be one of your saved contacts, a significantly more constrained and more detectable position, or to get past your explicit approval for the group invitation. Beyond these three primary technical changes, there are two practices that security researchers consistently identify as high impact for ordinary users. The first is auditing your existing group memberships with genuine critical attention. Every group currently in your WhatsApp account represents a collection of devices, some of which you have never interacted with, some belonging to people added by other people who were added by other people in chains of connection that you have no visibility into. Within any large group, the probability that at least one member's device has been compromised by any means, not necessarily through the attacks described here, rises with the size of the group. A compromised account anywhere in a group can be used to deliver malicious files to every other member. The practical response is not paranoia, but selectivity. Exit every group that serves no active current purpose, every group with large numbers of members you do not personally know, every group that was created for a temporary purpose that has since ended. The friction of leaving a group is zero. The friction of recovering from a device compromise is enormous. The second practice is maintaining WhatsApp updates without delay. The patch for CVE 2025-55177 was released by Meta between July 28th and August 4th, 2025. Every user who was running a version of WhatsApp older than that release window after August 4 was running the version that contained a vulnerability confirmed by CISA to be actively exploited in real-world attacks. The update containing the fix was available. The fix was free. The installation required less than a minute. And yet the gap between patch release and widespread user adoption is consistently measured in weeks for most applications, during which time users who have not yet updated remain exposed to attacks that the manufacturer has already resolved. Enable automatic updates for WhatsApp in your device's App Store settings. This ensures that security patches reach your device at the earliest technically possible moment, rather than whenever you next remember to check for updates manually. Two-step verification rounds out the immediate technical steps worth taking. This feature, found in WhatsApp under Settings, then Account, then Two-Step Verification, adds a PIN requirement to any attempt to register your WhatsApp phone number on a new device. It directly blocks SIM swapping attacks, in which an attacker convinces a mobile carrier to transfer your number to a SIM card they control, and it blocks scenarios where an attacker who has accessed your number attempts to move your WhatsApp account to a device they own. The setup takes minutes. The protection it provides is permanent. And it addresses a category of account takeover that is completely separate from the media processing exploits described here, meaning it adds a layer of defense against a different vector that is not covered by any of the other changes. The picture that emerges from all of this, from the January 2026 Project Zero disclosure, the August 2025 CVE 2025-55117 campaign, the December 2024 Paragon Graphite operation, the 2019 NSO Group Pegasus targeting, the CISA emergency designation, the Amnesty International forensic investigations, and Google's documented tracking of rising zero-day exploitation volumes, is of a platform that is genuinely useful, genuinely important to the daily lives of billions of people, and genuinely being exploited through specific, documented, technically understood attack vectors that specific, documented, technically understood settings, changes can meaningfully address. The attacks are real. The settings changes are real. The gap between those two realities is awareness, knowing that the threat exists, understanding which specific behaviors the threat exploits, and understanding which specific changes close those exploitable behaviors off. What is not resolved by any of this, and what no security researcher or cybersecurity organization has offered a complete answer to, is the question of what comes after. CVE 2025-55177 was patched. The Project Zero group chat vulnerability produced a partial fix in November 2025, with a comprehensive fix still in development as of the disclosure date. The Paragon Graphite campaign was disrupted in December 2024, but not before 90 devices were compromised. The pattern across all of these events is the same. A vulnerability is discovered and exploited. A fix is eventually deployed. Users who updated in time are protected. Users who did not are not. And somewhere in the intelligence and commercial surveillance communities, the next technique is already being developed, tested against real targets, and refined before any researcher outside those communities has any idea it exists. The zero day by definition is the vulnerability nobody knows about until it is already being used. The zero click by definition is the attack that offers no warning and requires no cooperation from its target. These categories of threat do not disappear when a single patch is deployed. They evolve. The actors behind them are sophisticated, well-resourced, commercially motivated, and operating in an environment where the demand for these capabilities continues to grow, as evidenced by the $500 million acquisition of Paragon Solutions in December 2024, and by the documented expansion of the mercenary spyware market globally. The settings changes described here address the documented vulnerabilities of 2024, 2025, and early 2026. They will not address vulnerabilities that have not yet been discovered. The honest truth of cybersecurity in 2026 is that no configuration of any messaging application, however carefully optimized, can guarantee protection against a sufficiently sophisticated and motivated adversary who has access to unknown vulnerabilities in the processing layer of the platform. What the settings can do, and what they meaningfully accomplish, is remove the easiest, most automated, most broadly deployable attack surfaces, forcing any attacker who wants to target you specifically to work significantly harder, to take more detectable steps, and to invest more resources in a campaign that would previously have required almost none. In a landscape where automated tools spray attacks across thousands of potential targets simultaneously and move on when they find resistance, being the target that requires genuine effort is not perfect protection, but it is real protection. And right now, with these specific vulnerabilities and these specific default settings, it is available to anyone willing to spend 15 minutes with their phone settings. The 200 people who received WhatsApp's compromised notification in September 2025 were not told in advance. Thus, 90 journalists notified about the Paragon campaign were not warned before graphite was installed on their devices. The 1,400 targets of the 2019 NSO group campaign through WhatsApp were not consulted about whether they consented to having their phone's microphone and camera accessed remotely. In every documented case, the notification came after. The warning arrived after the damage was done, after the private conversations had been read, after the sources had been exposed, after the financial information had been accessed, after the photographs had been copied, after months or years of invisible surveillance that the target never suspected was occurring. The purpose of everything covered here is to put the warning before. Before a malicious file arrives in a group chat, you did not choose to be added to. Before an automatic process, your phone performs in the background, becomes the mechanism of your own compromise. Before you receive a message from WhatsApp telling you that your device has very likely been taken over and that your best option at that point is to erase everything and start over. The settings are there, the information is verified, the timeline of events is documented and public. What happens next on your device is the one variable in this entire story that is entirely within your control.